Okay, we're going to do a mic test and a quick introduction. I have the joy of introducing you all later as keynote speakers. And Nicklas, I've already introduced you. Verity, I've already introduced you. So some of them know who you are. But can you quickly give us the Twitter bio version of who you are? Just the one line or two lines, starting with you, Verity.
Yes, hi everyone. So I'm Verity. I am the founder of an AI company called Formation Advisory, and I am director of the AI and Geopolitics project at the University of Cambridge.
David.
Hi, I'm David. I run Nvidia in EMEA. I've been with Nvidia 8 years since the very beginning, and you'd never heard of us, so I'm glad to be here today.
Nicklas.
I am the Global Director of Public Policy at Google DeepMind.
And Anya.
My name is Anna. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a leader. I'm today Global CFO of IKEA Retail, and before that I was leading the biggest transformation in China market of IKEA companies.
So, can we give a hand to our wonderful panelists? Yes, thank you all. Thank you for being here. This was tough to put this panel together because we wanted people that can play two roles. One, who've got an eye, macro level, what is happening. But two, who are involved in their companies, in the industries, at a one-on-one human level. And thankfully, you play both of those roles consistently. And so this panel is going to be exactly on that. I want to spend the least time talking. This is about the max I'm going to say. I want to give you the most time to talk. So let's start at the macro level. Verity, I'll start with you, and I'd love for you to just chime in when you want to. But what do we need to know? What are the big possibilities? What are the big challenges? What are the implications at a global level? Maybe you can break it down to an industry level, give us the IKEA perspective, maybe give us a science perspective if you'd like, Nicklas. David, you're in charge of EMEA, so what Verity says the global level, is that true here? Is it different? So let's start talking macro level.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So I think what it's important to understand is that we're seeing the increasing politicization of AI. We're seeing AI being used as a tool in geopolitical battles, sometimes as a proxy for other things. So there's been this growing movement towards more techno-nationalism than there has towards thinking about AI as a sort of globally beneficial technology. We've seen increasing narratives around AI as an arms race, comparing it with an arms race. And we're seeing that used in a way by nation states to cement and secure their own advantage. The United States is by far and away the leading player when it comes to AI. China is a distant second, I would say, although my fellow panelists may disagree. And what I would love to see, and I think what the possibilities are, is the United States playing this kind of global convening role, this global leadership role when it comes to AI as a collaborative and cooperative technology to uplift us all and fulfill its potential. And in my keynote just now, I was talking about how I really see this and come at this from a historical angle, having researched the history of other transformative technologies and seen how throughout history it's been global cooperation that's been needed to make advancements. So that's the kind of geopolitical trend, and I think it's proving difficult for businesses, for citizens, for smaller countries to sort of navigate an increasingly politicized space.
Yeah, I would agree. What we see in EMEA is a little bit different. Although they're the two big players in the world, which is China and the US, and clearly I would argue China is catching up. It has been challenged by the lack of access to US chips, but it is getting much better at developing its own technology. So I don't see the differential being sustained in the long term. With regards to EMEA, you see very different approaches in different countries. Some countries see this as a significant opportunity to reposition themselves globally. You see this particularly in the Middle East, where there is vast amounts of resources going into AI as a mechanism to not only create future economies based on AI, replacing the traditional economies based on oil and gas, etc., but also the ability to deliver AI services on behalf of different groups, particularly around language and around culture and various other things. So it's quite a different dynamic than we normally see in a normal business situation. Some countries have very much taken a national approach to things, whereby governments are stepping in. We've seen it in the UK, we've seen it elsewhere, whereby governments are stepping in and investing in national infrastructure to support the development of AI. In other countries, that's not happened, but you are seeing individuals such as Iliad in France with Xavier Niel, Wallenberg in Sweden, various other individuals deciding to invest their economic wealth in the development of AI on behalf of their country. So we're seeing lots of different approaches, and that really creates a different dynamic in each country.
I would say that the scientific community might be a really interesting exception to the rule, where geopolitics are playing out slightly differently, where you see a lot of people collaborating across many different geographies and political systems to solve hard scientific problems. And it's so fascinating, because I think when we see some of the products that we're working on, I mentioned AlphaFold this morning, there's 1.8 million researchers across the world working with this protein folding engine, trying to figure out how to cure disease, how to understand the basic building blocks of life. And maybe there's a way for us to sort of also realize that where this technology will do the most good is in trying to help solve some of those scientific opportunities out there, like climate change, pandemics. The answer to those questions naturally now, I think, has to involve AI in some way, which means that you have to have global cooperation there as well. And finding ways to agree on what those sets of problems are might be a first way for us to say, look, here's where we need to learn as a civilization. Here's where we need to really develop. So let's collaborate around these things and not get stuck into geopolitical silos, because I do believe that's really, it's damaging not just to the technology, it's also untenable given the nature of the kinds of problems that we have to solve. And I think there's value for us as an industry, for politicians, to bring us back to what it is we have to do together in order to continue to develop.
I think from my point of view, I can maybe share a few learnings that I had after talking to my peers in the market who run global companies, but also local companies, CEOs, CFOs, commercial managers. I think the era of, because I think we can look into 3 stages, why, what, and how. The why era is past, and I think everybody doesn't discuss why we need AI, why AI is important anymore. I think this is already passé. Many companies now going through the what and how. And I think it's quite important to acknowledge maybe 2 things. We know that only in 28% of the boards across the world, AI is on the agenda of those boards. 28%. So it's not fully embedded. There is a big awareness, but still what and how is still kind of a little bit how to do it and so on. Then second point, quite important, is that every company should have a very clear standpoint of view on the AI. We have decided at IKEA, very simply, to the point that people first and technology is enabler, dot. There's a standpoint of IKEA when it comes to AI and technology, which is very important. And I think many companies will have to make those statements sooner or later. What is the future of the people workforce? They grew company with it. What is the new upskilling, reskilling part and journey for those people who are employed in the companies? And at the same time, there's a big ethical element. Because let's be honest, AI topics, technological topics, it's not fully regulated yet. We are running behind. I know there's many efforts from many governments, many companies to really put some frames, ethical frames into the system, but things are not yet fully regulated. And there is a lot of freestyles because, as we know, simply some people abuse it. And it's very important that also all the leaders across all the sectors, organizations, put certain frames around the topic so we don't run into the challenge that we should not do. I don't know, guys, what you think about it.
I think it's interesting, the regulation part. I think you're right that there's a regulation challenge here. I wonder if it is that it's not regulated yet or that it's not harmoniously regulated yet, because you have an executive order in the US, you have a European AI Act in the European region, you have some global principles out of the G7, you have the OECD doing work on this, and then you see several different national legislations, and in the US there's even state legislation. So at this point, it's sort of a question of, yes, we should definitely have rules around this technology. No one disagrees. I think it's really important that we have robust regulation. But we also at some point need to come to a point where this fragmentation is sorted, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to collaborate. If you have one set of rules in sort of the city of Stockholm and another in the city of Malmö and a third in the city of Poznan, it's not going to work. Yes. So I think to some degree this is something that I think is absolutely should be at the top of the agenda. And I would argue for strong regulation, but strong, harmonized regulation. I think that's really important.
Yeah, the way we think about Nvidia is there are already good principles already out there for regulating the different industries we're in. In healthcare, you'd expect your physician to be licensed. They have a medical degree. Well, surely an AI should have a license to be able to operate in that environment. It's the same principle with a self-driving car. We're all expected to have a driving license. Therefore, there must be a standard that the car must adhere to in order to be able to be licensed. And the same principle applies to lots of different industries, lots of different use cases. We already have a great framework. We just need to understand what level the AI needs to perform at in order to be compliant with that, rather than trying to build a bespoke sort of AI regulation, trying to work out all potential possibilities that may or may not occur.
I agree. I mean, I do see, I work with lots of different businesses, large and small, and often, you know, and I come from the tech industry, so we have to have some humility about the role that we've played in this, but often regulation is seen as somehow the enemy of progress and the enemy of innovation. And it's not. You know, all of us on this stage agree that clear guardrails and boundaries are important in helping, especially smaller companies, understand where they're starting from and where they can innovate from. So I think the patchwork legislation, as Nicklas says, has led to a degree of uncertainty. And when I agree with Anya, you know, I talk to boards and I talk to executives inside companies who are excited about AI, but don't know how to start going about using it because they're frightened of sort of where it might go. The thing I think has also contributed to this is quite a helpful sort of surface level discussion about how dangerous it is. Mm-hmm. And look, you know, I spent my career working on the ethics and the societal impact of new technologies and AI, so I recognize very deeply that there are concerns, that there are areas where we shouldn't be using AI, or where AI is not ready, or some harmful outcomes. But the domination of the debate with notions that AI is frightening and dangerous, I think, has also led people to feel very uncertain about how to approach it. And, you know, in the UK, there's been some great stuff that's happened in the UK, but we have also had the Prime Minister say, on the one hand, he thinks this technology might cause human extinction, and on the other hand, he's not going to regulate, and he's going to wait and see. I think for your average citizen, business person, anybody that doesn't understand the intricacies of AI, haven't worked in it for you know, a decade or more, that's very confusing.
I'm glad you brought it there, because actually the topic about regulation in Europe is a panel that we're going to have a little bit later today. And so if you're interested in that conversation about who's doing what, who's leading that conversation, then please join that panel. But you're bringing up the human element, all right? The emotions, the feelings, the ethical implications. And to your point, Anya, you know, you said we're past the why. And I think for some people, myself included, we're past the why only because we're already doing it, not because we've had a full conversation about it and accepted the why. It's just, it's already happening. So now we just got to figure out what and how. So at a human level, we all have feelings. When we say AI, or when I saw the ChatGPT 4.0, I know some people are like, wow, and other people are like, oh boy, what is happening? So what should we be doing at a human level? You all lead companies, you all lead teams. How do you approach this conversation? What are things that we should be talking about? What are things that we're not that we should be talking about? Can you comment at an individual human level how this conversation proceeds?
I can maybe start from my own experience, because I think just as I started my job, we decided to actually bring the whole workforce of IKEA to AI literacy degree, that we are simply introducing AI to the 200,000 coworkers across IKEA markets across the world. Is transformation easy? Absolutely not. But I think at some point you have to make decisions as a company. And like I said, we have a clear point of view on the people agenda. So what we are doing at the moment, since September last year, we have started AI literacy training for, it was at the beginning 3,000 coworkers, 500 top leaders. And this training consisting from AI fundamentals, gen mastering content, etc., algorithm training, etc., depending on the specialization. At the same time, we training this year 30,000 people on the tools that we have to actually upskill them towards AI and technology, and to making sure that they're able to use the tool next year with full blast. So 200,000 people will be using the tools that will enable them to really drop the tasks that are repetitive and boring and really focus on the tasks that are bringing value to the company, to the consumer, have more time for upskilling, for reskilling, etc. So it's an important part really to invest in people and bring technology to them. Why it is important? It is important of two reasons. One, people are not afraid of change. People are afraid of loss. And on this transformational journey, it's important to take people with you and make sure they have the right prerequisites, time, and tools to understand, to upskill, and to reskill where needed. It's a very important part. And at the same time, it's very important to set certain boundaries I was mentioning earlier, which paths you will not cross as a company. Regulations will follow, yes or no, etc. But we have to have a clear point of view. That's why also we deployed across functional teams, across all the operating business of the company, data ethics resources team who are safeguarding certain principles and making sure that our value embedded in the deployment of AI. It's quite an important topic because at the end of the day, I think if each company that is thinking long term has to be trustful, has to be transparent, and has to be safe.
Thanks, Anya.
I like that. I think one of the other things that I would recommend, is sort of not from a corporate perspective, is to make the technology your own. Try to make sure that you use it, that you understand it, that you work with it. Because this technology is a technology that once you sort of approach it, you start to understand much more about its opportunities, but also its limitations. And I think one really important thing that's happened recently is that almost all of the large providers of AI have now adapted their models so that you can use them in your own language, which I think is really important. We did it for Gemini, others have done it for their, I think it was just, we just released that yesterday at in I.O. But I think when you start using it in your own language, you start working with it, you suddenly understand what it can do and what it can't do. And the personal experience is going to be important, because this is a tool that you'll be working with. Most likely, this is also the stupidest version of the tool you'll ever have, because it will become better and better from this point on. And getting a sense for what it can do and using it often, I think, is really important. That would be my core advice.
That's great advice.
And not sort of, and that's also, it was also true for the internet, to Verity's point, right? When the internet came, a lot of people were like, what's going to happen? Once you start using it, you see what it can and cannot do. Mm-hmm. So it's that personal familiarity with the technology that I would advise people to get.
Yes, and probably just to add to that, I think a lot of people think of AI operating independently, and we're not in that situation in most scenarios right now. There's definitely a human in the loop, and you need to think of that, the AI as being your, for want of a better term, a co-pilot, or that advisor with you who can make your life easier, give you insights, give you access to data that you haven't before, or automate tasks to speed up what you do. This isn't about leaving the decision making to the AI. This is about how can we make our workforce more productive.
Yeah, I can just add on to that very briefly. I think we get stuck when we think about artificial intelligence because it's a noun. We like nouns, they're hard, concrete things, so we say it's artificial intelligence, the AI. But if we instead scratch the surface of that noun to find the verb, we find the verb, and the verb is learning. So how are you learning? How's your organization learning? How's civilization learning? If you really dig in and you try to figure out, how can I learn differently now that this tool is at my fingertips? That's the kind of question you should be asking yourself.
The only thing I would add in the short time we have left is, in addition to echoing what the panelists have said, is something that I said in my keynote, which is that often I find people feel that they don't have a right to have a view on AI because they're not experts in AI. But that's really not the case. Firstly, it's really important that a wider variety of people have have their voices heard in decision making. But also, AI is going to, if it's not already, affect all different aspects, many aspects of society. And so if you're not an AI expert, that's okay, because you are an expert in something, and that thing is really important to AI as well. So I want to, sometimes my industry can be a bit gatekeeping and say, if you don't understand this, then you shouldn't, be part of the conversation. But I think it's completely the opposite. I think as an industry, we benefit from more types of people with different expertise coming and bringing that to the table. And so encouraging people to have the confidence that whatever your view about AI, even if it's just a gut instinct, it's just a feeling, that is valid and that is important.
So many nuggets of wisdom in just 20 minutes, which is almost criminal, but also fantastic that we could squeeze so much in a short time. To everyone on this panel, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for being part of Impact. Please, if you see them on the corridors, have a conversation with them. Check through the agenda, because Anya, you're on later today. David, you're on right now. You ready for this to go from...
Shall I go?
You don't get to leave.
Let's give it up to a wonderful panel. Thank you all so much.